Let's jump right into this explainer because today we're unpacking a cosmological narrative that is, honestly, just wild. We are tracing a single soul across space, across time, and through some completely different definitions of existence. Based on these specific spiritual readings, we're looking at a journey spanning hundreds of millions of years. It really challenges everything we think we know about history, reincarnation, and identity. So, if you've ever wondered how an ancient alien ideal might theoretically map onto human history, you're going to absolutely love this.
Just take a second to really process the central mystery here. How on Earth, or actually scratch that, how in the universe does an entity identifying as a goddess of beauty from Venus wind up wielding a katana in the blood-soaked streets of 19th century Japan? It's a massive leap, right? This sets the stage for a bizarre 500 million year journey from the stars straight into the Edo period. We're not just hopping centuries here, we are hopping entirely different states of being.
Looking at Chapter 7, titled The Venusian Goddess of Beauty, we're going to map out the internal logic of this highly intricate spiritual cosmology and see exactly how this entity defines its own monumental existence.
The sheer scale of this timeline is, well, it's staggering. We're talking about a gap of hundreds of millions of years. It kicks off roughly 500 million years ago on Venus. Then, there's this massive chronological leap in the recorded memories, dropping us straight into 18th and 19th century Europe as a friend of the famous writer Goethe. After that, right into 19th century Japan as Okita Soji, and finally, a present-day incarnation right here on Earth. Talk about a cosmic resume.
The crucial starting point is figuring out who this entity was at the very beginning. The text gives us this direct quote, "I was the goddess of beauty on Venus." That right there is their primary identity, their anchor. Everything about this soul's journey is rooted in that one core concept, aesthetics. But, as we'll see, that definition of beauty is going to undergo some serious stress testing once they're forced off their homeworld. Now, according to the readings, 500 million years ago, Venus wasn't the toxic, boiling hothouse we know today. Not at all. It boasted a highly advanced, highly aesthetic civilization. The entity notes they possessed a refined physical body. And there's this delightfully specific detail in the source text where they explicitly clarify they were absolutely not some sort of ugly toad or warty alien creature. They were physically beautiful, living in an environment perfectly tailored to high aesthetics. But of course, that utopian setup didn't last. The source material describes massive, catastrophic volcanic eruptions on Venus that literally displaced its inhabitants. And this brings up an incredible contrast. Think about the profound culture shock these Venusians must have felt arriving on a primitive Earth. Imagine going from the absolute pinnacle of refined architectural beauty to a planet this entity remembers as overwhelmingly dirty and red, just entirely unrefined. I mean, it was a total environmental and aesthetic downgrade. The original Japanese source texts document these claims directly. It maps out the entity's memories of this incredibly jarring transition from 500 million years ago, detailing that stark realization that this new, dirty, red planet was gonna be their new home. It's just a fascinating look at how this spiritual narrative frames the deep, deep past of our own planet, but through the eyes of an unwilling cosmic immigrant. So, faced with this muddy, unrefined new world, what exactly does a displaced goddess of beauty do? Well, they don't just survive, they develop a mission. The text lays out 3 clear steps here. First, they resolve to retain their high Venusian aesthetics, absolutely refusing to lower their standards to match early Earth. Second, they decided to continually reincarnate, specifically to teach the concept of beauty to humanity as it evolved. And third, and this is wild, doing this was part of fulfilling conditions for Earth to eventually join a sort of intergalactic coalition, like a space United Nations. In this context, beauty is literally a metric for planetary civilization. As humanity evolved, the entities started executing this mission through various past lives. Way before reaching Japan, they claim to have incarnated in Western history. The readings note a life as a literal knight on a white horse, which embodies that classic, romanticized European ideal of chivalric beauty. Later on, they incarnated as a close friend of the legendary German writer Goethe. You can really see how these lives just constantly circle that central theme of romanticism, high art, and classical aesthetics. But then, the narrative takes a really sharp, unexpected turn. We move from the poetry and romanticism of Europe straight into the Bakematsu period, the final years of the Edo period in Japan. Now, this was an era defined by extreme political upheaval, violence, and the clash of swords. So the big question is, how on earth does a former Venusian goddess, whose baseline is refined elegance, translate their mission of beauty into one of the most violent warring eras in human history? This leads to a fascinating redefinition of beauty. In Edo, Japan, the entity's aesthetic mission didn't show up in architecture or painting, it manifested in action. The concept of beauty evolved into a graceful way of living and dying. It became entirely about the relentless pursuit of masculine aesthetics and that terrifying, precise beauty you find in masterful swordsmanship. It's the ultimate samurai code, where absolute dedication, lethal grace, and an honorable death are seen as the highest forms of art. And the text shockingly reveals exactly who they were during this time. Their immediate past life, right before their current one, was none other than Okita Soji. If you know your Japanese history, you know Okita Soji was the legendary, tragic genius swordsman of the Shinsengumi who died super young of tuberculosis. The idea that a delicate goddess of beauty from Venus evolved into one of history's most famously lethal swordsmen is just a stunning narrative pivot. It really suggests that, for this soul, true beauty became synonymous with fleeting perfection and martial absolute.
Bringing it all the way to the present day, the text gives us some really interesting details on the entity's current Earth incarnation. They actually chose to be born male in this life specifically to keep conveying this evolved sense of masculine beauty they perfected as Okita Soji. Interestingly, they initially studied architecture, maybe a little callback to building a beautiful society, but found it just didn't suit them. Today, they deeply revere the author of these texts, and in a brilliantly relatable twist, they admit to being huge fans of the historical figure Sakamoto Ryoma and the modern pop culture icon Kimutaku. It's this amazing blend of grand cosmic origins and very grounded, relatable pop culture tastes. Which brings us to the end of this incredible timeline, leaving us with a really profound thought to take away. Just look at this journey. From a pristine Venusian paradise, to the romantic courts of Europe, to the bloody snow of Kyoto with a sword in hand, and finally down to modern-day Earth. It forces us to ask, if you had to carry your own definition of your highest ideal, whether that's beauty, justice, love, across 500 million years and entirely different human cultures, how would it evolve? What exactly does true beauty mean to you, and how much is it shaped by the world you're forced to live in? It's a genuinely fascinating narrative from the source material, and for sure something to chew on until next time.